This is your story, this is my story, but most of all, this is the greatest story ever told. This is God's story. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I am about to give to them, to the Israelites. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, and from the great river, the Euphrates, all the Hittite country, to the Mediterranean Sea in the west. No one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give to them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go.
Can you think of a time in your life when you were faced with an overwhelming challenge right in front of you that you had to confront and it scared you to death? What did you do? Did you face it or did you retreat? I immediately think of the soldiers at Normandy and the fear that must have been racing through their minds and hearts as they were about to jump into the water and charge the beach on June the 6th, 1944. On the day before, General George Patton gives a chilling speech to the Third Army. Listen to just a part of his words to them. I do not want to get any messages saying I am holding my position. We are not holding. We are advancing constantly, and we are not interested in holding on to anything. Our basic plan of operation is to advance and to keep on advancing, regardless of whether or not we have to go over or under or through the enemy. Well, today in chapter 7 of the story, the Israelites are faced with such an overwhelming challenge. It's time for them to enter the land that God promised to give them 600 years earlier. The upper story plan of God must advance. But there's a problem. There are already people who possess the land. There are lots of them. They are wicked people who wouldn't think twice about cutting your head off, and apparently a bunch of them are giants, really tall people. In order to take possession of the land, they're going to have to take it from these people. 40 years earlier, 12 men from Israel went out to spy the land, saw these giants, and retreated. Joshua is now in charge. 4 times in the opening 4 paragraphs of chapter 7, God instructs Joshua to be strong and courageous. It was only Joshua and Caleb of the 12 who believed that they should have gone in 40 years ago, only 2 of the 12. This time Joshua decides to send in only 2 spies. You see, committees seldom make courageous decisions, but safe ones. It's time for a courageous decision. How could they possibly be strong and courageous in this circumstance? The odds are stacked completely against them. We learn in this chapter that they needed 3 things to succeed. First, they needed to be people of the word. God tells Joshua at the opening of this chapter, keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. You may recall that the only time they were unsuccessful is when Achan violated the instructions of God and kept some of the property or spoil of the people of Jericho for himself. Their second conquest, the city of Ai, failed. You might have noticed that when Joshua dealt with this situation and they conquered Ai the second time around, that Joshua gathered all the people together and he reads the word, the law. Here's what the story tells us. Afterward, Joshua read all the words of the law, the blessings and the curses, just as it is written in the book of the law. There was not a word of all that Moses had commanded that Joshua did not read to the whole assembly of Israel, including the women and children and the foreigners who lived in the land among them. To avoid the Achan situation again, not only did Joshua need to be a man of the word, but all the people needed to be people of the word, to know it, to meditate on it, and to do what it says. This is the secret of success. Second, they needed to be people of prayer. God told Joshua, "You can be strong and courageous because the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." God is saying to Joshua, before you move forward, talk to me and make sure I'm going before you. There is no way you're going to beat these giants without me. You'll notice that in their first victory that the ark of the Lord, which represented God's presence, marched ahead of the army. Again, the only time they were unsuccessful is when Achan disobeyed the word of the Lord and secretively took the spoil for himself. The story tells us that God was not with them when they attacked Ai. The ark was absent. In order to be successful, they needed to constantly seek God to see if he was in on it. If he is, charge. If not, hold your position. Finally, they needed to be people identified with God. Before they engaged in their first battle, God instructed all the males to be circumcised. Circumcision outwardly identified them as belonging to God. This was something that the law instructed when a child is born, but they stopped doing it while they're in the wilderness. So before they began the conquest, all the males, young and old, were circumcised. We're told in the story that for a few painful days, the only able-bodied people in the camp were females. But when it was time for them to take off into battle, they were marked as belonging to God. With those three things in place, the battle begins. God dams up the Jordan River 16 miles upstream, enabling the nation of Israel to cross. They conquer Jericho first. After that, they conquer the city called Ai. Then they take out 5 kings and cities that came together against Israel. This is called the Southern Campaign. Then they move to the north and take out an alliance of 14 or so cities in the Northern Campaign. When it's all said and done, this is the report we receive. So Joshua took the entire land, just as the Lord directed Moses, and he gave it as an inheritance to Israel according to their tribal divisions. Then the land had rest from war. In the lower story, the giants are bigger than the Israelites. But in the upper story, God is bigger than the giants. We face battles in our own life. Like Joshua and the children of Israel, we need to be people of the word. We need to look intently into God's word, to discover his will, to learn how to proceed, to find courage and to find strength. We need to be people of prayer. We need to ask God if we should move forward or hold our position. You see, prayer involves listening to God. If he's in it, charge. If he's not, hold your position. Finally, we need to be people identified with God. For us today, it means if we've come into a relationship with God through Christ on the inside, we need to publicly declare our devotion and allegiance to him on the outside by being baptized, unashamedly identifying ourselves with God in private and in public. Remember, with God on our side, we will be successful. In the lower story, giants are bigger than we are, but in the upper story, God is bigger than our giants.